Hello, everyone. My name is Louise. I am an adult and teen services librarian at Morley Library. A few years ago, my mom called and asked if I would be interested and willing to research her ancestors. I jumped at this chance because although we knew her mom, aunts, uncles, cousins, great aunts, and great uncles, she never talked much about growing up or about her family. At the same time, I spent one morning a week assisting library patrons in the genealogy and local history room. By taking on this project, I would be able to practice the guidelines that I had been sharing with them. However, once I began to research my own ancestors, the excitement set in, and as one record led to the next document, led to the next ancestor, led to the next newspaper article, and to another document, I forgot all the guidelines I knew except one: organization. I did organize my records, which will make it easier to go back, practice what I preached, and what I'm sharing in this presentation about tracing your roots, beginning steps in genealogy. The best way to get started is to work with a family group sheet and an ancestor chart. We start with the family group sheet because it's used to focus your research on only the information that you'll record on your ancestor chart. There will be a couple of exceptions. First, depending on which ancestral chart you used, you may or may not be recording the information about your spouse that you have entered onto your family group sheet. And second, the information entered on your family group sheet about your children and their families will also not be entered on your ancestral chart. We'll begin with the family group sheet. We'll move on to vital records, which contain all the information needed to fill out your family group sheet and your ancestral chart. And we'll end with some local and online resources used to find those vital records. Okay. It's recommended that you start with a family group sheet for two reasons. First, it involves recording only the names, dates, and places of events relevant to your ancestors. Second, because this information maps out the relationships that will prove that these people are your ancestors. One family group sheet is completed for each family group. The first family group sheet is yours. You fill in the blanks for those events relevant to your life. Next, gather your documents. Do you have official copies of your birth or marriage certificate? If you don't, now's the time to get them. Make additional copies and keep with your genealogy and put the official documents in a safe place. Note that at the bottom of a family group sheet, you'll find space for keeping a written record of resources used. Make note where and when each record was found. Also, note any resource that didn't have what you needed. This saves time if you need to go back to a source or want to avoid returning to a source that turned out to be a dead end. After you complete your family group sheet, begin one for your parents. Enter what you know. Then, if possible, call your parents, find out if they are interested in genealogy, and if so, arrange a time to meet. Prepare for your visit in advance. Experts recommend focusing on one piece of information per visit. For example, on your first visit, ask if they have their marriage license. If so, then ask if you can have a copy. On your next visit, ask for birth certificates, and so on. If your parents begin to share stories about their lives, ask for permission to take notes or record those stories. Above all, respect their privacy and don't push beyond what they're willing to share. Once you've filled out their family group sheet, Work on collecting and recording your grandparents' vital statistics, followed by your great-grandparents, and so on. Any blank spaces on any of the family group sheets or any data entered but not verified with official documents is your genealogy to-do list. As you search for this information, try not to be too surprised by obstacles such as transcription and spelling errors, contradictory dates, and wrong dates. And remember, the older the record, the less information, especially regarding women and children. Also, there is a possibility that the event happened before a municipality, township, county, or state began keeping vital records. Nothing is entered into an ancestral chart, which is also known as a pedigree chart, until you have verified that information is correct. Verification requires finding two different official records that contain the same information. Also, save yourself some time and frustration by not copying information from family trees that are posted online, and do not include the sources for those records. Some folks have done this only to find out later on that Uncle Joe really isn't their ancestor, and now they have to scrap a great deal of research and start over again. Let's take a look at an ancestral chart. This is a sample of a 4-generation chart. Goes back as far as your great-grandparents. When you move on to your great-great-grandparents, you start a new chart. You are number 1, and this is chart number 1. The Ancestor Chart asks for only information that is found in vital records. That includes a name, the date of the event, and the place of the event. So to get started, you would enter in blank number 1, your first, middle, and last name in that order. Next, enter the date and place of your birth. If you're married, enter the date and place. You will find instructions online and in books that explain exactly how to enter vital statistics on an ancestral chart. Now, add your parents. Your father is number 2 on the chart. Your mother is number 3. Males are always going to be even numbers. Females are odd numbers. Continue with your grandparents, great-grandparents, and so on. How are vital records found, and why are they important? And to start with, vital records are birth, marriage, and death records. They are important for 2 reasons. First, the names, dates, places, and relationships found in vital records help to uniquely identify an individual, which in turn builds a strong foundation for a true and valid pedigree. Second, only the information found in vital records is recorded on an ancestor or pedigree chart. So, what do you need to know about when searching for vital records? In addition to names, places and dates play an important role in locating vital records. For example, most states began officially keeping records during the early 1900s. Prior to that, vital records were kept at the local level. I have 3 tools here that help clarify why locations are important to know when trying to locate records. First, let's take a look at vital records chart. This vital records chart was created by Family Tree magazine. And it shows you when statewide vital record keeping officially began in each U.S. state. In this column, you can see Ohio, and in 1908, Ohio officially began keeping the records for birth and death. It wasn't until 1949 that they officially started keeping marriage records. Okay, the next one is a document that was prepared by the Lake County Genealogical Society. And this drills down right to the local level for many people in Lake County. If you look at the top here, it starts with birth records. And from 1867 to 1908, these records were done sporadically. They were done at the Lake County Probate Court. From 1908 to current, if you were looking for a birth record, you would contact the Lake County General Health District. It will take you through here to death records and marriage records and give you the same information. The final item to share here is the Family Research Wiki, which is it's a how-to wiki. The page I'm showing is a page that would help you do research for records in Ohio. You can use this wiki to learn how to search for records overseas in Europe, Asia, Africa, and so on. But for our purposes here, if you scroll down the page a little bit, you could see some of the things it has to offer. There's a step-by-step Ohio research guide. It'll take you through how to find birth records, marriage records, and death records in Ohio. If you scroll down here, and you can click on the different counties, and it'll take you right down to the county record and give you tips on how to do your research there. Yeah, so it's a wonderful resource, and I recommend going in and taking a look at it. Whoops. So, what information might be found in vital records? And many experts recommend beginning with death records because they can often be found for someone who may not have a birth or a marriage record. Besides death certificates, you might look for church records or cemetery records. Cemetery records are an early form of death records, and they generally include an individual's name, date, and place of death. I have an example here from the Lake County Genealogical Society's index, and it is an index to cemetery inscriptions, which can be found on their website. Okay. So they had a big project a few years back, and they went out to all the cemeteries in Lake County and read the gravestone and transcribed those readings onto this index on this website. So if I scroll down to Painesville Cemeteries, here's Evergreen Cemetery. And If I scroll down the page here, you can see some of them are very brief, like here is H.L. Barstow's name, date of birth, and date of death. Whoa, that jumped. If I go to the next page, here we have Lewis Miller. Gives you his date of death, his age, it tells you who his wife was, and it also gives her date of death and her age at the time of her death. And it also tells where they were married. So those are just a couple of examples of what you'll find there. Moving forward to the 20th century, death certificates and what they might contain. Some of the things you'll find will be age and date of birth, sometimes a place, date and place of death, cause of death, funeral home, place of burial, disposition of cremation remains, last residence, marital status, and maiden name. Okay. You'll find the name of a surviving spouse and the name of an informant. It's important to note that an informant is simply someone who was present at the time of death. He or she may know very little or nothing about the deceased. It could be a relative with a faulty memory, and what this means is that except for the date, the time, and the place of death, there may be many errors in a death record. Next, we're going to take a look at marriage records. Local law usually required the recording of both church and civil marriages, and these were often the first records kept by both entities. They were usually recorded in the town or city where the bride lived. If you don't find a record where you think it should be, it may be that the couple was married in another county or state. It could also be because prior to the 20th century, it was not uncommon for marriage information not to be returned to the county clerk. Besides marriage certificates, there are other marriage records that you can look at. Things such as marriage registers that were kept by the individual performing the ceremony, records of intent to marry, such as marriage bans, marriage applications, license, and contracts. A marriage record may contain full names of both parties, date of marriage, date and place of birth for the bride or groom, age, church ceremony, county, whether they were single, widowed, or divorced at the time of marriage, and names of witnesses. Okay, finally, we're going to look at the third form of vital record, the birth records. And many experts recommend searching for these last because only a few states began keeping records as early as 1860. Most didn't begin recording birth records until between 1900 and 1903. When you begin to search for birth records, bear in mind that at this time the ability to request or view birth records may vary from state to state. And generally, birth records will include the name of the child, the date and place of birth, father's name, mother's name, including a maiden name, parents' birthplace. And again, often, the older the record, the less information, especially about women and children. And the reason that non-relatives may not be able to view a more current birth record is to protect persons' privacy. So, Let's move on to some local resources you might use in order to find um, vital records. We talked about cemeteries already. Churches may have records, marriage records, birth records. Courthouses, probate courts, of course, are going to have those early records. Um, Genealogical societies may have indexes, they may have digitized things that are in their collections. Um, Government offices, historical societies, and libraries. Historical societies, you may find some information there on local families. Libraries may have a local history and genealogy room. Um, Most of these entities will have a website that will contain information about how to request documents, what hours they're open, things like that. If you don't use the internet, make a phone call first and ask them things, like what are your hours? What information is required to request a document? How do you get a copy? Can you email? Do you have to fill out a form online? How much does it cost? If you're going to have to go in to pick up a copy of a record, remember that not all organizations are going to keep cash on hand or a lot of cash on hand. So you're going to want to ask what kind of payment methods they will accept. And if they do a cash payment, if they accept that, then chances are they don't keep large amounts of cash on hand. So make sure to take some small bills and some change with you. The final thing to remember when you go to any of these local places to check for information is that the staff um, most likely are not there to help with research. So before you go, find out how much help the staff can provide, because even if they do provide assistance, there may be a limit on how much time they could spend with you and how much help they can provide. And again, it's a good practice to ask for just one piece of information per visit. My final slide is a list of online resources. Find a Grave is a website. Uh, Morley Library Obituary Index is found on our website. The Ohio Obituary Index, again, is a website, as is the Lake County Gen Society and the National Genealogical Society. Ancestry Library Edition is a database. It's a subscription service that the library subscribes to. Right now, our version, which is a little different from the commercial version you can buy at home, is available for use through our website until July 31st. It will require you to log in with an Ohio library card, and it will actually be available to you from any Ohio library with any Ohio library card. Family Search is a website, but it is a little different. They will require you to create a login, a username, and a password in order to use their site. They just use that to keep track of the number of people that use the Family Search website. Morley Library is a Family Search affiliate library. This means that if you come to the library and use one of our computers to log into your account through our website, you will gain access to an additional 500 records that cannot be accessed when you log in from home. Heritage Quest is a subscription service much like Ancestry Library Edition. You can access that from home with your with any Ohio library card, and it's available 24/7. The Lake County Gen Society website, they have many indexes online and that they have created over the years. Also, if you can come to the library to attend one of their meetings, they meet that fourth Thursday of every month at 10 a.m. I'm sorry, not every month. They meet at 10 a.m. the fourth Thursday every month with the exception of August and December. They have a very active group, and the members are very generous with their time and what they know. They would be very happy to help you get started and give you pointers for how to do your genealogy research. At this time, I'd like to thank you for attending this presentation, and if you have any questions, please call us at the library and ask for the Adult and Teen Services Department, or send an email to genealogy@morleylibrary.org. Thank you. Bye-bye.